Let's do an example of a main program or a main function with command line arguments. Now you can do this in Eclipse, but it's best seen with when used with a command line. So let's just take a look and see. So far we've been using void for our main function argument, but now we will do this pair of arguments. You need both of them. I'll abbreviate it. I'll use C for count of strings, and the other parameter is car star, and I'll just use V to keep it short. Okay, and if this is all you change from void to having these two parameters, actually nothing changes. If you don't actually use it, it still works the same way. Everything still compiles, and you run this, and there's no difference. So let me just copy this, and what I'll do is I'll write. So I just copied it, and then I'm going to pull up a terminal. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an editor from the command line. And I'm going to call this x.cpp, and I'm going to insert all the stuff that I copied. And now what I will do is instead of printing out this string hello, what I will do is just print out all of the strings that come with the command line. So let's make it simple, and I will print out first just the very first thing in this array of strings. Remember, car star v open close square bracket, that is, you want to interpret that as an array of pointer to car. And remember that pointer to car, whenever you see that, you want to think, well, that's got to be a string. So that's how it's used in this situation. Alright, so I'm going to save this, and now I'm going to compile this. So from the command line, things are a little bit different. We went over this in one of the early videos for this course. Oops, alright, I got an error. Oh yeah. And what I will do is put an end line character after I print out just the very first string in this array. Save this, compile it, and now I can run it. So what I've done, if I list all the files here, is I have a x.cpp, which is pretty small, 156 bytes, and I compiled it into an executable called X in this case. And this is about almost 9K, well, a little bit more than 9K. And I can run this by saying X. And so let me list out the file, x.cpp. And so this first cout just prints out lecture 10, strings, end line. So that's right here. And then what I do is I print out the first thing, the first string in this array of strings, and it turns out the first string is just the name of the program itself. Okay, so not very interesting. So now what we'll do is maybe print out the next thing in this array. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to compile it and run it. And notice that we got nothing back. Let me print out the entire program, x.cpp, the new one. We printed out the first string in the array that's passed in, and then the second one at location 1, and we got nothing. So it turns out when you run a program, anything that you type in here after the name of the program goes into that array, in that array of strings. Okay, so if I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, turns out all of these, the name of the program, it goes into v sub 0, the 1 goes into v sub 1, the 2 goes into v sub 2, and so on. But of course we're only printing out the first thing, and so we see the 1. Okay, I hope that makes sense. And now what we can do, the standard thing to do is to print out everything in this array. How do you do that? This is where you need the length of the array. I don't need that many spaces. Alright, int, for int I equals 0, I less than, well, how many things are in the array? Well, that's what the C tells us. Okay, so I less than C, I plus plus. Alright, and then I get rid of this. And actually I don't need this open brace, do I? I can just put an I in here, and I'll print everything out one line at a time. Well, since I don't want them all in one line, I'll just put a bunch of spaces. And I'm using a lot of editor commands that I haven't talked about in this course, but I have in a different course. Alright, so what I've done, let's make this look a little better. Alright, so I'm going to print out, first of all, I'm going to print out lecture 10 strings, and then I'm going to sit in a loop and print out all of the things in this array V. That's what this is doing. How many things are there in this array? Well, that's what C gives us. Okay, so watch this now. Save it, I hope it compiles. There, it did compile. Let me list out the program. There it is, and now I'm going to run it. X. If I print out, if I call the program with no arguments, I just get this printed out. So the loop still executed, but there was only one thing in the V array, and I got it printed out. If I say 1, I get that. If I say 1, 2, I get 1, 2. And if I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, I get all of those. Okay, so now you know what this is for. So if you were, for example, if you wanted to do something like copy a file, right? If you have a couple of files, like if you have the command prompt, you'd want to do something like this: cp x.cpp y.cpp. Alright, and then what you do is when you list all the files, you see there's a copy of x called y. So if you were to look inside the C program that implements CP, what you would see is that it takes all of these arguments. This would be the second string. The first string would be the CP command itself. This would be the second string in that array of strings, and y.cpp would be the third thing in that array of strings from the command line. So that's what this is used for. That's what this int argc character star argv is used for. And those of you who remember Java, you remember that all your public static void mains, all of them had an array of strings. That's exactly what this is used for. It's for the command line, and that's why we see here command line arguments. So once again, argc, or I used C just to abbreviate this, tells you how many arguments were supplied on the command line, and argv, or the vector, or the array, is an array of C strings. Argv sub 0, in our case we used v sub 0. V sub 0 was the name of the program, then v sub 1 was the first parameter, v sub 2 was the second parameter. So in a program like copy, like we saw, what internally it would be doing is, internally it would say, okay, create a new file called the second string, open the file that corresponds to the first string, and if it works, go ahead. If it doesn't, then stop the program. And then in a loop, take every character from this file, x.cpp, and write it into this new file. That's all it does. So just about every command that you would execute on the command line is a C program just like this, and they all use argc and argv. And you can call it, as you saw, we can call it anything you want. Okay, so that's how you would use command line arguments. And this just shows you, if you were to put this in a file, test.cpp, and create an executable named test, when you run test, if you have a loop like this, it says argument. This will say argument 0 is test. If you run test with a couple of command line arguments, like the two strings hello and world, well, you'll just print them out. Argument 0 is test argument. So this thing goes into argv sub 0, the hello goes into argv sub 1, and the world goes into argv sub 2, and then you just see them printed out. Okay, so let's move on and let's take a look at more getLine things. You can call getLine directly as a member function of cin, which means all you do is get a complete line from the console, however many characters, and it's up to you, the programmer, to make sure that you have enough memory. Now, if you want to specify the length to receive, in this case, let's say you have only room for 5 characters, that is actually 4 characters and a null termination, then you want to specify 5 over here. Okay, so this forces only 4 characters plus the null character to be put into short string. Okay. You can also do I/O at the character level, that is one character by character rather than an entire array of characters. You can use input or output. You can do all kinds of conversion. There's all kinds of low-level utilities to, for example, convert to uppercase, lowercase, and we can use some of these things ourselves as well, but typically we don't do a whole lot of this. Sometimes, every once in a while, we have to do character. So, character input output. To do input, you have to use the member function. You can use the member function get. So you say cin.get. Okay, and then the only argument that you supply is the character. And what you have to do is put in. So it reads the next character that's on the console and puts it into this next symbol. So this argument has to be of character type. The opposite of get is the put, and that goes with the cout. So you call cout.put, and if you want to put out a single character, once again this should be single quote, and this is right. This is a double quote. So sorry about that. This should be a single quote, single quotation for a single character. Whenever you see whenever you're supposed to use a character, use single quote. Okay, so you might want to try this out. You can put one character in from this string of 10, this array of 10 characters. You can put in a single one, or you can write a loop to put out one character at a time, and that's exactly what cout does when you put out a whole string. There's more member functions. I'm not going to go over all of these. There's put back, peek, that is get the next character, but don't actually take it out of the buffer. So you can peek, that is you can look at the next character but leave it alone, and then when you'll get the same thing that you peeked. Okay, and then you can ignore number of outputs. You can convert, if you use the cc type include file, or you #include cc type. This is a bunch of C library functions like convert to uppercase to lowercase, check if it's uppercase, lowercase, check if it's a letter or number, or letter and or number, alphanumeric means letter or number, and there's a whole bunch of these. Is space, is punctuation. And next we look at the string class.